from India, from Denmark, from Holland, where we represented Berlin, Taiwan, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Albania, Croatia, United States, Slovenia. Holy fuck. Okay, we're worldwide. Norway, England, France, Netherlands. Wow. Australia, Uranus. Okay, nice. Okay, so let's talk fascia. Let's talk myofascial releases, which is releasing and integrating the myofascial system, which is the baseline and the foundation for the human body, which is also why I chose to make this the first webinar ever, because everything starts with the human fascia. And that's also why in my system, quantum biomechanics, that the baseline of everything is the myofascial system. So I have created this pyramid of the 7 pillars of quantum biomechanics, which is the formula for which you need to assess your body in order to get the results that we want, which is always optimized movement and the lower frequency of pain and injury. And at the base, there will always be the myofascial releases or the myofascial reset, because if the fascia isn't healthy and hydrated, the rest is irrelevant and you cannot fix anything. So we can just take it from the beginning, which is the pyramid of the 7 pillars of quantum biomechanics, which at the base, we have the myofascial resets. And then we have the RSA breathing. Breathing comes next. Then we have postural alignment. We have mobility. We have biomechanics, and we have fascial recoil. So when we go to the gym, traditional gym, when you go up there, you see people basically starting from the top. So they are trying to improve their movement, or they aren't even trying to improve their movement. They are trying to get bigger muscles. But basically they're starting from the top, ignoring all levels below this. And that's not how the body works. Ideally, that would be how the body works. So if we raised our children to be in the shape that they're born to be in, then we would be able to go directly to building our bodies, building muscles or building movement, which is what I preach. But that's not how the body or how the world works today. So what we ideally want to do is to do this whole reset phase, starting from the bottom, with the end goal of achieving this childlike state that all children are in. Because children are very fluid and they can hit themselves pretty hard without getting injuries. And this is the state that we also want to be in despite our increased age. So it all starts with the myofascial reset, and that's what we're going to do today. So my plan is, as we progress with more webinars, we will also progress in these advancements. So we will move up the ladders and see if we can at some point achieve better biomechanics and fascial recoil. But again, it starts with the myofascia. So what is fascia? Fascia is the uttermost tissue layer that encloses the entire human body. If we imagine the different layers, so we have the epidermis and we have the dermis, which is the skin. Just below that, we have the superficial adipose tissue, which is the superficial fat tissue. Below that, we have the superficial fascia, which is the first layer of fascia. You don't have to push pretty hard to manipulate that area of the fascia. Below that, we have the deep adipose tissue, the deep fat layer, and below that again, we have the deep fascial layers, which is the deepest part of the fascia. And we'll come to that later on how to manipulate that, but it needs more pressure, more intensity, and more volume to apply pressure or to manipulate that fascia. Underneath that, we have the muscles. So that's why the fascia, or the myofascia, which is the combination of myo, muscle, and fascia, because fascia attaches to the muscles. Another reason for why we want hydrated fascia, because you can see what happens if fascia gets dehydrated. The glide between the muscle will become impaired. So from this angle, you can see that the mobility of movement won't be good. So that leads us to the first point on how to hydrate fascia, because fascia is a fluid tissue. Fascia is a gel-like tissue, and we want to remain this gel-like effect. So there's two aspects to this. The water within the fascia is EC water, extracellular water, or we can call it plasma, we can call it fourth phase water, but it's basically a water that contains a net negative charge, meaning it carries electrons. And this is a pretty big deal because the human body is bioelectric, so we need negative charge to keep our bioelectricity within our bodies at a sustainable level. And fascia pretty much organizes this entire bioelectric system. So if we want, or if we're unable to hydrate our fascia sufficiently, then you can see what happens to our bioelectricity. It becomes impaired. So there's different hydration pathways within the fascia. There's intracellular, meaning the hydration that's produced by the cells, and there's the extracellular, meaning hydration produced outside the cells. And I don't want to talk about how much water you drink because it cares pretty little. What cares is what you do with the water already inside your body. So in terms of the extracellular water, also produced by your lymphatic system, for example, we want to nourish that as much as possible. So what happens when our fascia adhere and becomes sticky, as we just talked about? What happens is that this hydration flow becomes blocked. And that's why I always talk about traditional training being not so good, because what we basically do is we isolate one or two muscles at a time, for example, a biceps curl, and over time this exaggerated stress on a little part of the body will make these restrictions within the fascia, so it over time will dehydrate. And we will come back to what the signs are for the dehydration. And it's a pretty big deal because fascia orchestrates your entire posture, and we have this tensegrity model here that explains it pretty well. So if you consider the strings here, the black strings, as being your fascia, while the sticks are your bones, then we rely on fluids, fascia, to keep your posture integrated. So what happens with these restrictions, which is also called trigger points, and which is basically just a myofascial dehydration, is that when we get these small knots or restrictions, you can see how it reorganizes the entire posture. So if we don't respect this interconnectivity, then our posture will become dysfunctional, and I will show you that in a moment. So ideally, we want to release the entire fascia so that our posture is aligned and able to move freely, which brings us back to the multidimensional aspect that I keep talking about. So you can see here, nothing moves in isolation. Every time one bone moves, it reorchestrates the entire system. So within fascia, we need multidimensional movement and a multidimensional approach. And also we need to think about fascia as I talked about, this unified connecting layer, connecting the entire body. And if you think about it as a tablecloth, so tablecloth, and you have a lot of dishes and things on the table, if you pull in one end of the tablecloth, you will basically reorganize the entire system. That's the same that I just showed you. But within this unity of fascia, we also have connecting pathways. Some people like Tom Myers and Ida Rolf have proved this by dissections, where they dissected the human body and showed these myofascial pathways connecting to different muscles. And this is evident through the myofascial meridians, as we can see here. Let's just take a few examples, a few more tangible examples. For example, we have the superficial front line, which is the front line of the body of tissues, of fascial tissues that are connecting different muscles. So you can see here the sternum, up here, the sternum, the rectus abdominis, and the rectus femoris, and all the way down. Likewise, we have the spiral line, which is very evident for the rotational principles of the human body, but also for the multidimensional principles. So what these different myofascial meridians basically show us is that the human body is designed to move in particular planes. None of these myofascial meridians show one or two isolated muscles. It shows an integrated system. So that's why we want to treat it that way. So we want to hydrate our myofascial system. So let's talk about what are the definition of dehydration. I always look at it this way. We can look at it two ways. One is persistent pain. So you may have this pain, ongoing pain that you can feel when you move. You can maybe feel it when you sit. For most people, they can really feel it when they apply pressure to some parts of the body. The reason why I call it persistent pain is because it persists. So there is some pain that goes away after 3 days, some pain that is exercise induced, something like that. That's not myofascial trigger points. Trigger points are persistent, meaning that they stay. So every time we notice these persistent pain spots, you basically know that you have a trigger point. In some cases, I would say 10% or less, there is these silent trigger points. So trigger points that you basically can't feel. That's why we have a second route to diagnosing trigger points, which is the posture. So when I assess people, I go through it via two phases. I will show you that on one of my clients in a moment. First, I look at their posture. Unless the posture is perfectly aligned, which it never is in 2025, then there might be issues. And we can see that every time there is a misalignment, there must be a myofascial issue within that area. And that's up to me to see kind of where might this myofascial trigger point be. For example, if I had a person standing laterally and they had forward hunched shoulders, which is pretty damn normal, then it might very well be in the pectoralis muscles that could be trigger points, because trigger points tend to pull joints forward. Okay, so this is how we can assess it. Every time we see some compression or curvatures or something that shouldn't be in our postures, it is a sign of a trigger point, and then it's up to your expertise or your knowledge to kind of know where these trigger points might be. But I just gave you a clue to tell you that trigger point is compression, so it's pulling things forward. Or in the abdominal obliques, very common spot. I have one myself. My daughter already has one for whatever reason, but that tends to pull the thorax down, because once again, a trigger point pulls. So that gives us a clear indication for where we might have trigger points. Next thing is feeling. Okay, so you can feel by doing the myofascial releases, or what I do as a trainer, I feel by having my client laying down and I push on various spots of the body, spots that I've already just diagnosed from having them in a posture. So let's take a look. I've brought my client here. Would you like to see a bit of how we can diagnose the fascia, like hands-on and visually? Then we can take a look at that. And yes, it is being recorded, and you can assess it afterwards also for the people that are not able to attend today. All other questions I think we will take in 15 minutes or so. So let's have you on here. Drop your shirts. This is also why I always do my training like almost naked, because we have to, and it's not to have this aesthetic view, that's simply to always consider posture and take posture into the equation, also to get this multidimensional approach to movement. Erling Haaland. I don't know if that's good or bad. Okay, let's take a look here. Can we maybe get your legs as well if you go farther back? Go farther back. Okay, try and stand still. Then we have everything. Okay, so what I would basically do in the beginning, both for you but also for my clients, is to have the person close their eyes. Okay, and then walk in place. So take a few walks without really moving. Take a few small jumps. And then relax and open your eyes. And the reason why I do that is to get a random position or a natural position according to your posture. Because if not, then we might manipulate the way our posture is. So I will take a look here. You're actually pretty aligned. What I can see, I don't know if it's possible for you to see, but there might be a slight drop here. And remember, every time there is a drop, it means there is a compression somewhere down the line. And also, if you can see it, we have some externally rotated feet. What we would like to is feet that are almost entirely linear. And I can just give you a little piece of knowledge on that, but what drags feet into an external position is primarily the glutes. And this is a very normal dysfunction. So whenever the feet are externally locked, this is, I would say, 80–90% of the time, a trigger point within the glutes. Okay, let's have you sideways. And again, just relax fully. Then we can see some more compressions here. First of all, if I have this one, this is to assess his lateral alignment. I will have this as much vertical as possible. So you can see what we would basically like here is all spots from the malleolus to the knee, to the pelvis, to the mid of the rib cage, to the shoulder, and to the ear should follow this stick. And it basically doesn't. So it means he's very much on his forefoot, which is kind of normal today because everything in modern sedentary lifestyle happens in front of us. So that has nothing really at all. It has something to do with the myofascia, but it's pretty difficult to diagnose. So let's take what we can diagnose. Again, just relax. Slightly forward punched shoulders, which again, like I told you before, often means that we have trigger points here. Relax, look forward. Okay. Neck also, as you can see, a bit curved, meaning that it's pulled forward, but also chin is being pulled up. And what this means basically oftentimes is that either the SCM, sternocleidomastoid, located here, which is pulling the neck forward, could be restricted, or the suboccipital muscles here, which is during the chin elevation, could be restricted as well. Last, the posterior view. So you turn around with your back. And again, just relax, try to give us a neutral posture. Again, what we're looking at here from an anterior and posterior view is mainly the horizontal lines, whereas I just showed you from the lateral view, we are mainly looking at the vertical lines. So we want to see if there's any horizontal drops in this plane. And again, it looks pretty good. I'm once again stuck on looking at your feet because, again, there's a drop on the medial arch slightly, but also the external rotation, as I told you about before. But from what I can see here, horizontally, no big drops, maybe slightly again in the same shoulder that I told you about before. And again, let's say there is a restriction that is pulling the shoulder down. Most of the time, it is the abdominal obliques that are somehow compressed and doing this restriction. What it can also do with a restriction here is pull the pelvis up. So that's seen as a lateral pelvic tilt. But again, these are the things that you need to think about, that trigger points make compressions, so they are pulling. So if you see some of these tilts in your posture, you need to diagnose and assess what is doing the pull. So this can be a bit tricky, and that's why I want you to also emphasize the next thing, which is the feeling. And on your body, you can do the feeling with your thumbs, you can do the feeling with the fireball, with any type of equipment, and we go back to that later. But for now, I will have him laying down here, and then I will do the feeling. I don't know if you maybe should lay down sideways. Let's have you sideways so people can see it. Okay? There you go. No, on the back. Okay. So always want to start with the obvious, like where did I assess some potential trigger points? And that could be here in the chest. And then I just simply go over here, simply start applying pressure. And I apply pretty rough pressure. This is not a treatment, this is just a kind of diagnose. See if he's feeling anything. Are you feeling anything? Yes. Okay. And then we can rate it. That's normally just what I do with my clients. So I ask them to rate it from 1 to 10, where 10 is worst and 1 is almost no feeling. So what do you feel here? If I apply as much pressure as possible? 7. A 7. Okay. So a 7 is definitely a trigger point. And again, when you do this on yourself, you won't be in doubt. Persistent pain when you apply pressure is by definition a trigger point, a restriction, a myofascial dehydration. So when we do these releases, we're basically rehydrating dehydrated tissues. And if you want to use an analogy, then think about this. Think about the sponge in water analogy. So you are compressing the sponge, putting it inside the water. When you release this pressure, it attracts water back into it. That's basically what we do here. So we apply pressure. And when we release this pressure after 2 to 10 minutes, we will come back to that. We attract water back into the tissues. Over time, not after one session, but over time, this can be 1 week, 1 month, 1 year maybe. The rehydration flow will be reintegrated into the myofascia. So let's take a look again here. If I want to apply pressure on the stomach area, I want you to come into a flexed position so we don't have any contractions in the abdomen. I didn't notice anything on his posture here, but I just want to assess either way to see if I can either feel anything or if he can feel anything. Because oftentimes these myofascial restrictions are not only sore, but they are also hard, like a tender or a pretty hard piece of rubber band. That's what you should feel. In here, it's pretty soft, but how does it feel if I apply pressure on your abdominal obliques? I would say 5. So that's not so much, still a slight trigger point. Might be a trigger point in the superficial fascial layer. Let's move on to the diaphragm, which is very, very important. I would say, along with your feet, do releases on the diaphragm every day, and you can do this with your own hands. I can show you in 1 minute. How does it feel? 7. That's definitely something in here. So like imagine the consequences of a diaphragm with restrictions, which is the main breathing muscles. So if you have a restricted diaphragm with myofascial trigger points and it cannot expand properly, then look at the shallow breathing state that you're in. This applies to your entire body. This is just breathing, but imagine a muscle that cannot contract properly or stretch properly. It just puts you into this compressed, locked position where you cannot move optimally. And over time, this is what creates movement pain, basically. It's pretty simple. So we want to get out of this state. And that's also why I consider this a recipe, because once you have done this and keep doing multidimensional movements, you won't come back to it again. You don't have to, because you're in this childlike state that you need to be in. With other types of training routines and programs, you're kind of forced to be in this loop forever. This is a once in a lifetime. I think I spent like 3 months releasing my entire myofascial system. This might be less for some, this might be remarkably more for others, but it's an investment, because once you have released your entire myofascial system, you don't have to do it anymore. Like maybe you go through a stressful period and your trapezius muscles might lock up, then you do a little release, or maybe you have to do it as warm-ups for an exercise once and now. But again, it's an investment because you only have to do it once. Then you have released your entire system. You can progress to the breathing, to the multidimensional movements, and then you fix your movements and you stay there. So that's how it works. Okay, thank you. So let's look at how to do these releases yourself, because that is the most important. It is how to learn how to do it yourself, because not all the people in here are professionals. So I will bring some tools so you can see how to apply them, why and for how long, etc. Let's do like this. Because of the body's shape and form, we might need to use different types of equipment to effectively penetrate the different areas of the body. But I would say if you need one thing, it's definitely this one. Our MFR ball, we don't have patent on this one, you can basically find it anywhere. But the MFR ball is the universal one. I would say you can use it for 85% of the body. But if you have the options for it, then also a kettlebell, because you can use the handle of the kettlebell to basically penetrate different areas of the body, like the obliques. Of course, you have your hands, also relevant for some places of the body. PVC pipe. This is the core of a foam roller. So if you remove all the foam from a foam roller, this is what you'll find inside. And a foam roller is basically useless. I use it for some parts of my body to do a superficial release or something like that, but for deep penetration where you want to release any trigger points, not relevant. This one is very hard and will hit the deep fascia like we talked about initially. Then a hard medicine ball, which is just an MFR ball in a bigger version, because again, some muscles or some fascial areas are just bigger. So you want to apply pressure to a bigger area, then this one would be good. I'm having sound issues. Is this for everyone, or can you hear what I say? When you say, okay, no, sounds fine. Okay, all good. Okay, last one. Also not super relevant, but if you want to be able to apply pressure to all parts of the body, then this Theracane or a stick, like I just showed you that you could buy for no money, would be relevant. For example, to apply self-pressure on the pectoralis minor, wherever would I use this? Like if you want to apply pressure on the trapezius, this may not be the best version for this type of release, but that's also a possibility. Or in the psoas, for example, which might be even more applicable when you lay down, because then you can really dig deep, almost penetrate into the spine where the psoas attaches. So let's see here. Let's also cover the hands before we end, because at some points of the body, hands would be good. For example, the SCM here. Sometimes I have some tightness where I can feel in one side or maybe in both sides. They're pretty tied up. So even when I'm driving my car, when I'm sitting in the sofa, something like that, I can just use my finger here, and to locate the SCM, you simply press your head forward, and there's this long sheet of tissue running down here. So you can basically apply pressure to the entire sheet. And before I forget, so there are some rules here. You want to apply pressure as hard as possible, of course within some pressure range that you can still work through. But you want to apply as much pressure as possible to dig as deep as possible. Then the frequency or the time that you want to do it in is hold this maximum pressure for between 2 and 10 minutes. If you do it less than this, it's not sufficiently enough to go in and rehydrate the tissue properly. And do it more than that, in some cases it would be relevant. Other than that, you may be causing too much of an inflammation. This inflammatory state is pretty normal when you do these massages. So you might get sore the day after, or 2 days after. That's pretty normal because you make a small inflammation. Kind of when you train, you're sore the day after, and the day or two after, 2 days after that, you're stronger basically. So that's what you want to do. You want to be in a meditative state. You want to focus on your breathing, slow nose breathing, because it regulates your nervous system to become focused on your parasympathetic nervous system. So it's basically telling your entire body, from the mind to the muscles to the tissues, to relax. So you want to remain in that state. You don't want to sit on YouTube or scroll down anything. Focus on these few minutes on each release by being in this relaxed and calm state to support you. Last but not least, make sure that the area that you're focusing on doesn't contract, because the outer layer is the fascia, but underneath, like we talked about, there is a muscle. So if we apply pressure and you contract your muscle, meanwhile, you're basically counteracting the pressure. Say I apply pressure to my pectoralis muscle, and because it hurts so much, I subconsciously contract my pectoralis. That counteracts the pressure. So in this meditative state, you want to make sure that you are fully relaxed, not just in your mind, but also in your muscles. So before we go to the Q&A, I want to take you through a real-time release so you can see and feel how it would work on yourself. Let's take a few. So there are some basic principles. Principle number one is that we mainly want to keep a static pressure. So a pressure where you won't move, or either move the pressure just slightly, because this will focus on the fascia. Some areas, for example, in the feet, you want to apply pressure on a pretty big area, this triangular area of tissue within the center of the foot. So you could, if you have a single trigger point that you know is just right here, then you apply the static pressure. But if you just want to release the bigger area, then you can slightly and gently roll around like I would do here. So you keep the same pressure basically. You keep the same big pressure as you would do in a static position, but you apply slight, gentle and slow movement so that you can come in on all corners of this triangular shape. But for the most part, our trigger points are very small, insignificant in size, and therefore we would, most of the time, just stay in an almost isometric static pressure. Okay, so let's take a painful one. This is still painful on me. Let's see anything here. Yeah. So the vastus lateralis, which is the external part of your quads. First, I would locate to see where there might be a trigger point. And again, I used a big ball here because it penetrates a bigger area, so this would be appropriate for this point. Okay, so again, I make sure that I have no contractions in my muscles to better locate the area. And this would be here. Okay, so I find a position where I can apply as much pressure to the area as possible. It should be here. I focus my sole intention. I'm not contracting, making my muscles butter-like. And I know I talk a lot about muscles, but this is still fascia that we are targeting. But again, fascia attaches to muscles. The muscles still play a big role in this, hence why it's called myofascial. And from here, I would simply close my eyes and focus on breathing that supports my parasympathetic nervous system. So the nervous system, the part of my nervous system that makes me relax. And this can be slow inhale and an even slower exhale, because we know scientifically that exhales that are 3 times longer than the inhalation will accelerate the parasympathetic response. So simply closed eyes, could be breathing in for 3 seconds, breathing out for 9 seconds. Or if you're capable, 5 seconds in, 15 seconds out, 4 seconds in, 12 seconds out, etc. Just this ratio of 1 in, 3 out. And again, in some cases, it might just be relevant to apply slow, gentle movement. But again, for the most part, especially with a tool in this size, it's irrelevant. And before we end up, let's just let's cover this one, because again, you have to be a little versatile sometimes with the equipment that you use, because some places of the body needs different types of equipment. Like for example, in the abdominal area, the oblique area just below your rib cage, there is not much that can penetrate here. This is not deep enough. This is not big. This is not big enough. This is too big. This one you might, but you cannot lean over it. Hence, this is pretty brilliant for this. So I put it here. Let's do it like this so you can see. Rest it up underneath my rib cage. And again, when you're close to bones, it's even more important that you do this gently. You don't want to apply pressure on bones. That's obvious. But when you are close to bones, don't do any rough movements, because you don't want to press the bones. That could potentially break them. Just so you're careful. But this one, for example, is good at penetrating this area. If I wanted to go up underneath my rib cage centrally to hit the diaphragm, I would in this case use my hands. I think this is the best version. Again, it's very, very important that you release any pre-existing tension or contraction in your abdomen, because once you contract your abdomen, you cannot penetrate in underneath your rib cage in where the diaphragm is located. So you simply just grab here, relax as much as possible. It's very bad to talk while you do this, but at least you're not talking now. Then gentle movement here. See if you can feel this umbrella-like sheet of tissue up underneath your diaphragm. Okay, we could go on for hours, but I guess this covered it pretty good. Just one moment, let me find something to sit on. So again, you can look at fascia from different angles. You can look at it from a movement perspective, like we just basically did, or you can look at it from a bioelectrical perspective, with the latter being the most promising and the most exciting, if you ask me, because when you move into this field of bioelectricity and quantum coherence in the body, you move into a bigger part of consciousness and communication, cellular health, and yeah, but I think in the next 5 or 10 years there will be some pretty big discoveries, which is only underlining the importance of fascia, because fascia is very fucking important, and that's why you probably hear about fascia everywhere on the internet right now. So I hope you learned a little here. Let's have a little Q&A. Okay. How often should you release a trigger point? It depends. But I would say as often as possible. But keep a recovery of 24 hours in between, because, like I said, as with exercise, you need a recovery period. So you release a trigger point as often as possible until that trigger point is released, being your posture has even improved or has either improved by being more decompressed, more aligned, or the persistent pain simply is slowly going away. Just remember the 24 hours of rest. Would you benefit from doing red light or other before releasing the fascia? No, you would benefit from doing red light while you do the fascia, because red light is supporting the hydration within the human body. So hydration and myofascial releases, red light and myofascial releases go hand in hand. So either you go outside on the grass, that would be perfect, because then you're also grounded, flowing the body with negative charge, or you do it inside on a infrared panel, for example. Is it completely necessary to stop exercise to release the fascia? I'm an athlete. No, it's not. It's not. But if you're doing exercise that is counteracting the positive benefits of fascia, like traditional training, which an athlete is often doing, then the results are coming at a slower pace, or it might even block the results. That's why I say be conscious about your movement while you do your myofascial reset. I don't force anyone to do anything, so I don't tell you what to do and not to do. I just tell you that be careful with your movement, because if you're already dysfunctional, then these dysfunctional movements will just exaggerate the problems that you're already in. How do you train the biceps, for example, according to fascia training? Well, you don't want to train your biceps. You want to train your entire body, and that's why I talk about multidimensional movement, because the principle about multidimensional movement is that you move with as many muscles active as possible. So the bicep is never active alone like it is in a bicep curl. It interacts with a number of other muscles in your body to guide the best outcome of movement. And yes, you still become muscular, but just at a pace that respects optimal movement and pain reduction in your body. Can posture and fascial dysfunctions be fixed, or can we only manage it using your techniques? I'm not sure I understand the question, but yes, it can be fixed, and yes, it can be fixed with my techniques, which are basically not mine techniques, but are just universal techniques that I have discovered among others. So yes, they can be fixed by releasing your fascia and reintegrating their movement pattern in this reverse pyramids that I just talked about of the 7 pillars. And if you go to my website, mtperformance.co, you can read about this system and read about these different layers of how to assess the body most effectively. What is your training schedule? My training schedule is that I'm not so active anymore as I used to be, but that doesn't matter, because as I talk a lot about, we are energy conserving creatures. So we are not meant to exercise hard and then compensate for the high intensity by counting calories and eating a lot of food. We're meant to do the opposite: conserve energy, of course move, but that's why I'm such a big proponent of farming or gardening or doing anything outside in nature. So of course we need to move, and especially in modern sedentary lifestyle, but keep it at a moderate level. I would say high intensity training has never been healthy and won't ever be healthy. You don't find a hunter-gatherer that wakes up in the morning and says, let's run a 5K today. That's something we do today for whatever reason. So back to the question, I train like 4 times a week. I think half an hour of multidimensional movements and myofascial releases. Is it okay to do during pregnancy? Yes, but be careful in areas, of course, around the abdomen. But there's also something about acupuncture points that can trigger the initiation of labor. So you can definitely, but I'm not the person to tell you exactly what points you need to be careful about. But with my education in traditional Chinese medicine, I know that there are some spots on your body that you need to be careful about, because you can trigger these DC generators, which is basically an acupuncture point to get you into labor. So yes, but be careful. Should you release a trigger point before or after football training? Let's replace football training and say exercise. Can you release a trigger point before or after an exercise session? Yes, definitely. And you can do it both. I would say the most important is to do it before, because then you're releasing any pre-existing tensions that will improve your exercise regimen. Pre-exposed that you, or presuppose that your exercise regimen is good. So yes, and you can also do it after you have tension your muscles so you can release your fascia that way. But most importantly, do it before to optimize the training session. Does drinking water with salt in the mornings do any good for hydrating the fascia? Yes, absolutely. That's electrolytes. That is hydration. Structured water. It's also very good. Hydrogen infused water. Very good. But again, fascial hydration is not about how much water and what water you drink, but what you do with the water that's already inside your body. Like I said, the intracellular and the extracellular water. And that's what we want to release via the lymphatic system by doing the releases. So drinking water comes secondary. What would you recommend if my rib cage is compressed and therefore restrict my breathing? I just told you, myofascial releases, and especially use your hands up underneath your rib cage. So myofascial release these restrictions. And of course, if something restricts your breathing, find out, do a quick search, what is the human respiratory muscles. And then you can find out what muscles or what myofascia to release to improve your breathing mechanics. Thoughts on scraping? That tool. Again, that's a very dynamic thing, and we can also just draw parallels to foam rolling, because scraping is just a more rough version of foam rolling where you're doing a lot of dynamic pressure. It's good. It's good. Scraping is better than foam rolling because foam rolling only applies pressure to the very superficial layers of the fascia, meaning that you can't do any real myofascial releases. Scraping is pretty rough, as I remember. I haven't tried it. I've only seen it and studied it. So yeah, could be beneficial, but not as beneficial as the releasing techniques that I just showed you. The most important body part to do myofascial releases on, I think I just told you, like the diaphragm and the feet, because they are universal part. Like everybody utilizes or uses their diaphragm to guide breathing, and everyone relies on good breathing. Likewise, the feet, all human movement begins and ends within the feet. So everyone would benefit from doing releases underneath the feet. So I would say these two are at least universal, but the best are the trigger points within your particular body. It's been amazing to watch you grow. Thank you. I don't know if you're talking about my muscles or my platform, but thank you either way. Do you teach any tongue position whilst releasing to optimize the release? I guess I know what you mean, but yeah, tongue posture while you do the releases, you could, but it's really just distracting you from doing the release. Of course, we already want to have a high tongue posture to support our breathing. If you can do it while you do the releases, fine with me. But if it distracts you from doing the releases optimally, then don't. Then do it separately. It seems like we're getting some repeating. Or maybe people are just asking the same question twice. Can scoliosis be fixed with this if you're an adult? Yes, it can. And I fixed a few of those, both people on my online course, but also clients of mine that I've done hands-on techniques on. So yes, it can be fixed. Most importantly, it can be improved, because functional scoliosis is really the same principles as kyphosis or whatever your issues are. It's the restricted tissues that are pulling on the spine, and they are even causing a disc bulge or something like that. So yes, it has a big effect on the spine, and once you release the spine or release the restrictions that are causing the curvatures, then you will either fix or more potentially improve your scoliosis? Yes. What is your opinion on marathon training or running at all? Marathon training is very high intensity, and I already told you about my opinion on that. Running is perfect. Running is one of the pillars of human movement: walking, running, hunting, and farming and gardening being the pillars or what we originated to do. So running is very good. But if you run on a body that is very dysfunctional, full of myofascial restrictions, yeah, then it can backfire. But the art of running is very good. Walk and run as much as possible, just not too big distances. Is cupping also for 2 to 10 minutes? No, cupping is up to 15 to 20 minutes. And we didn't cover cupping today, but cupping is also a way of releasing the fascia. Instead of applying pressure to the fascia, you're just decompressing the fascia. The end goal is the same for both. Why are we getting so many repeating answers or questions? What are your perspectives on barefoot shoes? Barefoot shoes are great. They don't look very nice, but they are the best shoe on your foot that you can use. So when possible, do that. I do that myself in situations where I don't have to look nice. But when you need to wear shoes, of course, wear barefoot shoes. But being barefoot can also do it unless there's snow outside. You don't want to get frostbites. Any other ways to hydrate fascia apart from releasing it? Yeah, there are less effective ways, but they're not as relevant as releasing it. So if you want to keep your fascia hydrated, release it and do multidimensional movement. But because of course, if you don't move at all, that will also dehydrate your fascia. So myofascial releases and movement, and more particularly multidimensional movement, because isolated gym training will do the opposite. So multidimensional movement that distribute loads throughout the entire body will help rehydrate the fascia and keep the flow. Oh, sorry. Can you show an example of how to release the shoulder blades area? No, but I can tell you how, because on the outside of the spine and on the inside of the shoulder blades, there are this little sheet of tissue that runs in between. Then you can do the releases with the MFR ball. You need some pretty small. You can also, if you go to a therapist, have them crunch your arm like this. This will open the shoulder blade so you can penetrate up underneath the shoulder blade. But the easiest thing is to do the MFR ball up in between. Just don't apply pressure on any bones, like I said. Thoughts on static stretching? That's also very relevant, because static stretching is, for the most part, bullshit. Can you give me a band? Just someone, yeah. So what you basically do with your muscles and tissues when you do a static stretch is this. Keep stretching, stretching, stretching to your end position, and keep the stretch right here. So in any tissue that is doing this, is this over time becoming weaker or stronger? So if I held this tension here for 10 hours, it would eventually break. Okay, so this is what happens when you do static stretching. That's why our protocol in the quantum biomechanics is called FCB mobility, functional contraction based mobility. This means mobility training or stretching training that is including contraction. So while you do the stretch, there will be some sort of muscle contraction, so that the muscle is not only stretching, it's also contracting. So you're integrating stretch or strength into the stretch. The ideal stretch is movement-based stretching, so movements that are really engaging broad ranges of motion. So in short, static stretching is not good in the long term. Why I also is not a proponent of modern types of yoga because you are in these exaggerated, unnatural positions for a very, very long time. So instead of becoming stronger, we often wind up becoming weaker. Let's take 3 more questions. What's your opinion, also a very interesting one, what's your opinion, take on myofascial and mental health? Is it possible to regain mental stability via these MFR principles? Yes, absolutely, because there's a big connection between your emotional state and your fascia. And I definitely believe that emotions are stored as magnetic fields within the fascia. So by releasing fascia, we're also releasing emotions. There's also been scientific studies on this, especially on the trapezius muscle, that our emotional states is connected to the trapezius state. So whenever we, and I feel that myself, I've felt that a lot of times, I guess a lot of you people out there has also felt it, like whenever you're really mentally stressed, your trapezius do like this. So the mere effect of releasing the tension in the trapezius is releasing the mental stress up here. And the same goes for all emotional states. And I've had clients and customers various times who I've released a certain parts of the body and they just break out into tears. So definitely emotion is stored within the fascia, and we can release one of them and we will release the other. What sports would be ideal for fascia? Anything that incorporates rotation and multidimensional movement. So for example, swimming is bad, cycling is bad. Swimming because you are laying down, you are mainly moving your arms and legs in weird positions. Cycling, you are static in your upper body, you are moving in a flexed position, etc., etc. So for example, football is good, baseball is good, basketball is good, handball is good. And again, I'm not the person saying quit your sport because it's dysfunctional for human movement, because there's also an aspect called joy. But from a pure functional perspective, think in terms of the origin of human movement. So what movement did the hunter-gatherers do, and how is this reflected most in modern sports? So again, these multidimensional movements that relies on running mechanics and rotations are basically good. Thank you for all your compliments. I appreciate that, and I can see them as well, even though I don't respond to them. Yes, fighting is also good, of course. Rock climbing is not so good, no, because you are moving statically with your lower body, basically, and the arms and the pulling is doing the most of the job. I've done a lot of rock climbing myself, and I love it, and I keep doing it despite it being maybe not the most functional, but from a fascia perspective, it isolates the body too much. Calisthenics, same. Tennis, yes. Are you planning to make some other sizes for your elastic bands? No, but come with suggestions if they don't fit you. I thought I made some. I had 3 sizes, and I actually thought I made them to fit most people. But please come with suggestions on email. That would be good. Pilates, yes, I guess it's okay. I'm not so much into Pilates, so I'm not sure, but from what I know, yes, it should be okay. All right. Okay, and for those of you that are interested in trying the Quantum Biomechanics online course that we've talked so much about, we are offering 20% only for those that have attended this lecture today. And apart from the 10% or the 20%, you also get the free Human Mechanics ebook and the MFR balls. You can start doing the releases immediately. We will share an email with the details, but the code that you can already use now is MTP20. for those that are interested to try this out. Let's take one last question before we finish off. Will you publish a training program? No, because I'm not a fan of training programs. I believe that you need to educate yourself on how your body works and how to make it work. If I make a training program, you get paralyzed into it like you would do from following any other training guru out there. You need to become educated, as with anything else, on how your body works and how to make it work and how to fix it if it stops working. An exercise program won't do that. And that's basically what we did with the Quantum Biomechanics online courses, to make an educational platform so you will know how to handle your own body or people in needs that you need to take care of at one point in your life. So it's been a pleasure today, and this will definitely not be the last time. As I said in the beginning, we will do a series of these webinars where we will progress in these 7 pillars of the quantum biomechanics principles. So maybe next time it will be breathing, maybe it will be posture, something like that. But you will hear from me. And again, until that, if you want to get on board the Quantum Biomechanics online course, you can use the code MTP20 to get 20% off, and we will send you some additional gifts in form of the free ebook and also the MFR vault, so you can start the releases. But it's been a pleasure that so many of you wanted to attend, despite being the first time here. So until next time, guys and girls, and thank you so much for attending, and see you on the other side. Ciao.